Hello, my name is Deandra Ryan Moss, and this is part one of our three-part What the Function series. Today we're going to be talking about an introduction to functions in JavaScript. What are they and how do we use them? So the word function is most commonly used in a mathematical sense. You probably saw at some point something that looks like this. F of x equals 2x plus 3. And this represents a rule. So we have input, some sort of number that comes in, and then we apply the rule, we multiply 2, add 3, and we spit back out an output. And in JavaScript, functions are very similar in that we think about them as a series of input and output. So as we go through this series and take a look at functions, how to use them, and how to build them, we're always going to come back to the same question, which is what is our input and what is our output? Let's take a look at some common functions in JavaScript. So the first I want to look at is array.isArray. Now this function takes in one piece of input, and it will output a Boolean. So we can put in a string, and we get the Boolean false. If we put in an array, it will return true. And so how do we know for sure that this thing is outputting true? Well, one way to test is to try to save the function call into a variable. I'm going to call it output. And sure enough, if I run this, I can see that output is defined. It is true. When we talk about output in programming, we have a word for that, return value. So in this case, array.isArray returns a Boolean. Let's take a look at another function with a return value, math.random. So math.random outputs a random number between 0 and 1. And we notice that as we run it, the exact output value will change a little bit because the point of the function is to randomize, but it will always fit that criteria of being a random number between 0 and 1. Another thing to notice about math.random is that it does not have any input value. Notice the parentheses are empty. So what that means is even if you tried to stick something in there, it's not going to affect the way that it runs. It still always produces that random number between 0 and 1. All right, let's take a look at another function, console.log. So console.log takes in a parameter, and it will log that to the console. So you might think that the output in this case is going to be equal to the string hello. Let's check it out. So we get hello logged to the console as we expected, but we also see false. Output is apparently not equal to the string hello. So in this case, what is our output? Well, it turns out that console.log doesn't have any output. So when we run this, output is never defined. Now this is a point of confusion to a lot of beginners in JavaScript. How is it that console.log doesn't have a return value when we can clearly see hello appearing on the console? And this is a subtle point, but the reason is that console.log's behavior is that it makes whatever you put in appear on the console, but it doesn't actually resolve to be equal to anything. So this line of code has an effect, hello appears in the console, but it does not have a return value. As we look into writing our own functions, we might see a little more clearly what this concept looks like on the inside. But for now, you just need to continue to ask yourself, does a function have an output, or does it merely have an effect? And the easiest way to tell is to do exactly this. Go ahead and save your function call into a variable called output and see is output defined or not. So let's bring back array.isArray. This right here is a function. When we run it, we see function. And you can think of function as being the rule. This rule here says take the input, check and see if it's an array or not, and return a Boolean based on that. So what happens when we actually call the function? Now, this resolves to be a Boolean. And this is a really important distinction. So array.isArray without the parentheses is a function. Array.isArray with the parentheses and the input is the return value. It's a Boolean. Let's take a look at math.random as well. If we do math.random without parentheses, it's a function. When we throw the parentheses on the end, it's now a number. And so this becomes really important because we need to know what we're working with. Are we working with a function itself, or are we working with the result of a function, which could be a number or a Boolean or just about anything else? And there's a really easy way to tell which one we're working with, the parentheses. So think about these parentheses as being a button. If we have parentheses, the button's been pressed, the function has been executed, and all we're working with is the output. If we don't have the parentheses, it's just a rule. It's just the potential to create the output, but the output itself does not exist yet. Well, that concludes our lesson on Introduction to Functions. Stick around for our second video in which we'll explore how to write our own functions.